Hi everyone. In this video, we will go over the steps to install and configure Cohesity app on a ServiceNow instance. Using this integration, you would be able to perform workflows like VM protection, cloning VMs for test and dev, searching and restoring files and folders, and much more. Let's get started. For this demo, we will be using a development instance. You can also run the same Cohesity app on a test instance or a production instance. In order to use the developer instance, you need to have a ServiceNow developer account. Log into the developer account. For this demo, I have already created a developer instance. Let's log into the developer instance using the default credentials. The first step is to install the Cohesity app. Search for Store and click on ServiceNow Store. Here, you can search for the Cohesity app. Click on View Detail. On this page, you can click on Get to install this app on your instance. You need to have HI credentials to install the app. Once the installation is successful, the next step is to create a bunch of users. Go to Users under Organization. I've created this user, which has a group assigned to it called cohesity.user. Any user with this group should be able to run the workflows in a read-only fashion, meaning this user can run the workflows, but he cannot configure a new cluster. The next user is the admin user. This user has a group assigned to it called cohesity.admin, and any user with this group should be able to add new cluster as well as run all the workflows. The Cohesity app also supports the approval workflow. This is why we have created a user called cohesity.approval with a bunch of groups assigned to it. These groups decide whether this user can approve some request from a different user. You can also have different users with different such groups assigned to them so that they can approve a certain workflow request. In this case, I have assigned all the groups to a single user for the sake of simplicity. I have also created another user called mid-server. This user will be used during the configuration of our mid-server. We have a group called Cohesity admin assigned to it, using which it can communicate to the Cohesity cluster and the ServiceNow instance. After the users have been created, the next step is to select the Cohesity app and the developer application. To do that, click on the gear icon, select Developer, and under the Application drop-down, select the Cohesity app. The Cohesity app uses mid-server to perform communication between the Cohesity cluster and the ServiceNow instance. In this case, I have already installed a mid-server on a CentOS VM. Check the video description for a link on how to install a mid-server. You can see that the mid-server here is up and validated. This mid-server can talk to the Cohesity cluster as well as to the ServiceNow instance. Let's log in to the mid-server VM to check the configuration. In order to configure the mid-server, you need to add a user in the config.xml file under agent directory. In this case, I have added the user that I showed you earlier. This user is the one that has Cohesity admin role assigned to it, using which it can access the app. You can also use start and stop script to restart the mid-server services. The next step is to log in using the user which has the group cohesity.admin assigned to it, which is this particular user. Let's log in. Once you log in, you can get started with the cluster configuration. Under cluster configuration, click on New, enter your cluster details, and select the mid-server. This is the mid-server that we saw earlier. The next step is to select the configuration type. It can be Discover, Webhook, or both. If you select Discover, it connects the cluster and pulls any information related to production job, sources, etc. When you select Webhook, it creates a webhook configuration on the Cohesity cluster, and any alerts that are raised on the cluster can be seen as incidents on ServiceNow app. In this case, I'm going to select Discover and Webhook both. The last step is to select all the workflows for which this user needs approval for. The user can either select all the workflows or the ones that he wants. After this is done, we can start the discovery and webhook configuration of this cluster. Click on the button and wait for it. You can see that the discovery has started. You can also modify other configurations like webhook configuration. You can select what alert category do you want to see from the Cohesity cluster in the ServiceNow application. In this case, let's leave it to default. You can also configure multiple Cohesity clusters on the Cohesity app in the ServiceNow instance. We have tested up to 5 Cohesity cluster configuration using a single myth server. In this case, we're going to use the configuration type as discover. It may take a few seconds for the discovery to be completed. Once completed, any user with cohesity.user-group should be able to access the app and perform any workflow. The approvals for these workflow will go to the cohesity.approval user, which we saw earlier. This concludes the demo. Thank you.